Hello everyone, in this video I'll be ranking the strongest subclasses in Baldur's Gate 3 on a tier list. Now I'll be mostly ranking these based off their offensive potential, but things like their own survivability and crowd control are going to be weighted in on these decisions as well. And the first ones that we got is all the Cleric Subclasses, which clerics are typically thought of as more of a support or a healer role, but in actuality, Baldur's Gate 3 clerics are very powerful. Now first off, we got the Knowledge Domain Cleric, which it's not the strongest. I would have to say it's a roleplay tier because it's best suited for that purpose. If you want to roleplay as a knowledge cleric, that's awesome. Kind of similar with the nature domain cleric, but actually in Act 1, the nature cleric is a little bit stronger than the rest in terms of it's got Shillelagh or Shillelagh, so you can use your wisdom modifier for attack rolls and use like a club for a bit of extra damage. I would have to say C tier for that. You can also use Shillelagh on a torch to get a bit extra fire damage on top of all of that too. So nature domain's all right. I'll put it in the C tier. Next we got the light domain. I'm going to say the light domain is S tier. What makes it so powerful is it gets the radiance of the dawn. And on top of all that, it's really great at a radiating orb build. Now, I just posted a video yesterday of a radiating orb build, so you can go check that out. But basically, it gives a -1 to attack rolls every time you stack radiating orbs up. And you can stack 6 per attack with a build off the light cleric. So 2 attacks, and you basically have a -10 to attack rolls. So survivability, incredible. Damage, also really good, because it gets things like Fireball, the Radiance of the Dawn, which I mentioned, and overall, the Light Cleric is just really awesome. The Spirit Guardians is also a nice way to be able to apply a bunch of conditions and damage to targets. So it's definitely S tier, I would say. Next, we got the Trickery Domain, which I'm going to probably put underneath the Nature Domain. This is more focused on like stealth combat, which is not the Cleric's strong suit. This is what Shadowheart starts off as. Not the worst class. I'm just going to put it in C tier because we have a lot of other really, really powerful classes, which I'll be getting to. Next, we got the Tempest Cleric. I think this is easy S tier. It's stronger than the light domain. What makes the Tempest Cleric really busted is the fact that it gets a channel divinity, which allows you to do maximum amount of damage with either your lightning or thunder spells. So if you were to cast Chain Lightning, which does upwards of 80 damage, in Create Water, you can channel divinity, make sure it does the highest damage roll, so it hits that perfect 80, which gets doubled to 160 damage. Honestly, one of the biggest nukers in this game because it has such high Nova damage because of that. It makes for a perfect collaboration with like a Storm Sorcerer or a Draconic Sorcerer. But even just level 12 Tempest Cleric is incredibly strong. And it also gets a reaction that deals damage. And it's just a total blast to play. So that's the strongest Cleric in my opinion, with Light Cleric being close. Next we have the Life Domain Cleric. This isn't bad, but it's not that strong in comparison to some others. It's great for healing, and on your first playthrough, you might want to run with a Life Cleric, just as you're getting familiar with how Baldur's Gate 3 works. Typically, combat's going to be over within like 2 or 3 turns in Act 3, so healing is not one of the things you want to be doing. You don't want to extend out combat. I'm going to put it in the B tier, though, because it can be useful for new players to get a grasp of the concepts of Baldur's Gate 3 in combat, so I would say it's B tier. Next, we got the War Domain Cleric. This is honestly the best single level dip in Baldur's Gate 3 is the War Domain Cleric, because it'll give you a bonus action attack, which is huge on pretty much any build. When you get to level 11 with a class, sometimes it's debatable if you should put another level to get the feat, or if you should take War Cleric for the 3 bonus action attacks you can get. That is extremely powerful. I'm going to put it... it's tough to put 3 of them in the S tier, so... it really depends on what kind of build you're going for. I might put War Domain in A tier because going all the way up to level 12 War Domain is not as strong as these two, but it multi-class is way better. So little asterisks beside that. This one is incredible. Best level, 1 level dip in the game. So next, we got the Circle of the Moon Druid. So this is actually the best tanky build in the game. Not a lot of people I see talk about this, but the Circle of the Moon, basically they can wild shape as a bonus action. On top of that, they get a ton of temporary health with that. And you can also wild shape into like the Myrmidon. So you can go into the earth or air Myrmidons, which are very powerful. Water Myrmidon is also really good too. And the fire one gets haste. So they have a ton of different options for not only damage, but also for survivability. Definitely the best tank in the game. I would have to say I would like to put it in S tier, but I'm going to just say A tier for now, and I'll reevaluate a little bit later on. And next we get the Circle of the Land Druid. This is another really powerful build because it's kind of like a wizard, but you also get your wild shape. So you do have like that tankiness that comes with wild shape. So transforming into an owlbear, it has upwards of like 100 health on level 12, which is fantastic. And you can do that twice. So that's 200 extra temporary health that you can get. Now, when you're in your wild shape, you do have a lower armor class, so you're going to be targeted more, making you tanky. This applies for the Moon Druid as well as the Spore Druid as well, but I would have to say the Land Druid is another, it's a very underrated build. I'm going to put it in the A tier because having access to a lot of the spells that other classes gets fantastic. Plus, you get Minor Elemental, you get Major Elemental, and you get the Woodland Being. So, Spike Growth is awesome for crowd control, but you can summon in the Wood Dryad. They can summon in their Wood Woad, and then they are the ones that can apply the Spike Growth to the ground. So, very great class. I would say that the Land Druid is very underrated. And then finally, we got the Circle of Spores Druid, which I think is the best Necromancer in the game. So their method is they have the Symbiotic Entity form, which you can go into it using your Wild Shape form. Gives you temporary health on top of your health bar, and you stay in it while you have that temporary health. You also get a whole bunch of different attacks, and on top of that, you can raise up zombies that will bring up more zombies as they take out enemies. So it's great for support, and I think this is a class that not enough people take advantage of because it has a lot of utility that people, I just find, don't utilize as much. And also, the Circle of the Sporekeeper armor that you can get in Act 3 will allow you to cast haste on your entire party. That is absolutely powerful and deserving of S tier, I would say. I'm just going to put it in the S tier. Some people may disagree, but give the Circle of the Spore Druid a try because with that armor, they can give haste to 4 people. They can make a little haste bubble that people can walk into. Applies haste to the entire team. You can apply haste to your summons. It's just incredibly powerful and a very fun class too. The other 2 druids are, I would say Druid as a whole is very underrated. They give you 2 druids in the game with Halsin and Jaheira, but I see a lot of people dunking on the druids. They're a little complex at first, but a very powerful class. Next, we got the Battlemaster Fighter, Eldritch Knight Fighter, and the Champion Fighter. So, fighters are kind of like your bread and butter martial class. If you want to go sword and board, or if you want to go a two-hander, anything's good with these guys. Now, they all have a specific function. The Battlemaster has their maneuvers, which gives them crowd control. Menacing Strike and Disarming Strike are 2 very nice maneuvers. Menacing Strike can cause creatures to get frightened, which is massive. And also, Disarming Strike allows you to pick up the enemy's weapon. So that's big too. Eldritch, I'll put the Battlemaster in the S tier as well, because this is a class where it's hard to go wrong. They get 3 attacks at level 11, so that's awesome. And then you can multi-class 1 level to War Cleric to get 4 attacks with that extra bonus action, which is nice. But it's pretty straightforward. Heavy armor, heavy weapons, give her. Next, we have the Eldritch Knight, which I would say could, depending on your build, if you're using like a Nyrulna throwing build, this could be even better. The reason the Eldritch Knight is so good is they get the bound weapon, allowing them to throw, and you can stack this with Tavern Brawler and make any weapon a throwing weapon and returns to your hand, so you just keep throwing it. I would also say the Eldritch Knight is S tier. It's just incredible amounts of damage. They could go down to A tier, but I'm going to put them in the S tier for now because I do think that they are very, very strong classes, and they require a little bit less thinking than the others to succeed because it's just basically go in and bonk people with your weapon. Or in the case of the Eldritch Knight, throw your weapon to bonk people in the head. So, yeah, very powerful 2 classes. Next, we got the Champion, which there is a few benefits to the Champion I don't want to ignore. So the Champion gets 2 fighting styles. That's a nice little unique thing that not a lot of people talk about. So it gets 2 fighting styles. It gets one later on. Basically, the premise of the Champion Fighter is you have to roll a 19 to get a critical hit, so you're much more likely to deal critical damage, which is nice. Outside of that, it just doesn't have the extra benefits that the other 2 fighter classes get, so I have to put that in the B tier because the Battlemaster, 9 times out of 10, is going to be stronger. I know there are some crit fishing builds that are great with the Champion, but they require a lot of setup, and it's relying on random luck most of the time, which, I mean, most of this game is, to be fair. I know some people love the Champion Fighter. I just think that the other 2 fighters are a little bit stronger in terms of their overall damage output. Next, we got Berserker Barbarian, Wild Heart, and the Wild Magic. Berserker Barbarian is awesome. Berserker on its own, level 12, not as great as throwing in like 3 levels of the Rogue Thief, because when you throw in Rogue Thief, you get an extra bonus action for your Throw Zerker. So this is best used as a throwing build, similar to Eldritch Knight. I'm going to put them both up in the S tier because throwing in this game is pretty strong. Tavern Brawler is awesome. And the Berserker itself is a pretty fun class to play as. Karlach is typically going to be played as that, so Berserker is very powerful, and I would say one of the strongest classes in the game because you get the rage, so you take half physical damage, which is nice. But even still, Constitution Amulet will give you a ton of armor class, +6 to your armor class while wearing clothing. It's a really great build overall. So yeah, I'll put it in the S tier. The Wild Heart Barbarian, also really good. There's two builds that stick out to me with the Wild Heart that I've used. The Bear Heart, which will give you resistance to all damage types except for Psychic. So you're resistant to magical damage, which is amazing. And that just gives you a lot of tankiness. And then also the Tiger Heart Barbarian. It gives you the Tiger's Bloodlust, which basically is a cleave attack that you can hit 3 people. It deals half weapon damage, but it also applies bleed, which means the target takes 2 damage slashing type per turn. And on top of that as well, if you have the aspect of the Wolverine, which is exclusive to the Wild Heart Barbarian, you can maim the target, which gives them 0 movement speed. So basically with this, you want to bleed them and then keep maiming them. If you have a target knocked prone, you can continually maim them and they can't get back up. So that's huge. I would say that's probably A tier, and then Wild Magic is roleplay tier. It's just too unpredictable. You wouldn't really want to be running this on like an honor mode playthrough. So yeah, I'm going to put in the roleplay. It is a fun build, but it's not reliable. Next, we got the Circle of Swords Bard. I'm going to put that at the top of the S tier. This is an incredible... I'm going to try and rank these within tiers. Yeah, something like that probably. So yeah, College of Sword Bard. What makes this so powerful is you get Slashing Flourish, which is you use 1 Bardic Inspiration to hit 2 people, or to hand crossbow 2 people, or just crossbow, bow, whatever, 2 people. And you can also target the same target twice with this Slashing Flourish ranged. Where this becomes extremely powerful is you can multi-class something like the Paladin. The Paladin Divine Smite will be applied to your flourishes, so you can smite 2 people for the price of 1. Awesome. And that only requires 2 levels into the Paladin, so you can go 10 levels of Sword Bard, get the magical secrets. On top of that, the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel will allow you to cast your enchantment and illusion spells as a bonus action, so Greater Invisibility as a bonus action, Hold Person, Command, Tasha's Hideous Laughter, endless crowd control as a bonus action. On top of that, the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, which you can get in Act 1. You can use Arrow of Many Targets to get a +10 to your Arcane Acuity, meaning you got a +10 to your spell save DC. No one is going to resist your Hold Person at that level. So extremely powerful. You could solo the game with a Sword Bard Paladin mix, or Sword Bard with 2 levels of Fighter. Just extremely strong. Next, we got the College of Lore Bard. This is still a very good class. The College of Lore will get its extra... It will be able to pick 2 spells at level 6 and at level 10, similar to the Sword Bard getting at level 10, same Baldur 10. You get at level 6, so you can take things like Spirit Guardians and Hunger of Hadar at level 6, which is pretty cool, because Hunger of Hadar and Spirit Guardians are 2 really great crowd control options and damage options. On top of that, unfortunately, you can only use 1 concentration at a time, so you'd either pick really between Hunger of Hadar or the Spirit Guardians, but there's a lot of people that love Lore Bards. I would say it's probably B tier, but I'm going to put it in the A tier because I know if I speak bad of this Lore Bard, someone's going to be upset because it is a good class overall. Bards are really great to play as. I'm going to put it probably A tier to B tier. College of Valor is almost like a roleplay tier because it doesn't get any big benefit over the Sword Bard. It gets shields, but so does many different races in Baldur's Gate 3, so that's not really a big benefit. The Valor Bard's not the worst class in the world, but I would say it's more so of a roleplay build, so yeah. Next, we got another one of the most powerful builds in the game with the Open Hand Monk. This is actually one of my favorites because it's got such high Nova damage. I think this is the best single target damage class in the game, at least from my testing. Now, I really like 9 levels of the Open Hand Monk with 3 levels of Rogue Thief. Because you get most of your perks at level 9, the only thing you'd get at like 10, 11, 12 is your extra key points, which are useful. But there's a lot of ways you can regenerate key points. And there's even an amulet that will allow you to regenerate key points. So the extra 3 levels in Rogue Thief for an extra bonus action, Flurry of Blows, is awesome. Because Flurry of Blows allows you to... If you got something like the Gloves of Soul Rejuvenation, which give you a plus 1d10 force damage on your attacks, that's an extra 2d10. So that's 20 potential extra damage on your bonus action. That's before talking about every other damage rider that you can apply. Open Hand Monk is probably it's tough to say if a Sword Bard's stronger or not than them, because the Sword Bard's got really great crowd control, whereas the Open Hand Monk is just slaughter everything in sight, basically. What's nice about the Open Hand Monk, though, too, is it does have the ability to knock targets prone. So it does have some crowd control. It doesn't have a lot of area of effect damage, but you have the key resonation punch where you can like target someone and then explode them without even using an action or a bonus action. So that makes it really nice. Very strong Nova Burst damage class. Next we have the Way of the Shadows Monk. This isn't bad. There's some people that do really like the Shadow Monk. I would say it's good in the right hands, but I'm going to throw in the roleplay tier because I don't like to throw it in a roleplay tier because it is strong in certain people for certain people's builds. But I would say like it's a strong roleplay class. I'll put it at the top of the roleplay, I guess, because it's just for the average player. You're better off going with Open Hand Monk because you're going to have way higher damage without thinking. The Shadow of the Monk does work with some really good builds. Like if you got like a Shadow or Darkness build, it can work well, but just requires a bit more setup. And for the average player, it's going to be harder to get as much. I don't even think you could possibly get as much burst damage as Open Hand Monk. So since the Open Hand Monk's so strong, it just makes this one look worse in comparison. Now the Way of the Four Elements Monk is interesting because not a very rare situation, but if silence is all over the area, you can't cast your spells. The Way of the Four Elements Monk can, because theirs are actions and not spells. I would say it's probably B tier, like not the worst class ever, but if you really want to sling fireballs, play as a sorcerer, play as a wizard, play as a fiend warlock. This is just a little bit weaker, so I would have to say it's probably B tier. Next, we got the Paladins. I love Paladin. It was my first playthrough. Playing as a Paladin makes you feel like you're like a police officer in Faerun, so that's kind of fun because you got a lot of role play. The Bard has the most dialogue for being most unique dialogue per class, but the Paladin has just as, not as much, but a good amount, and you can feel like you're actually making impact in the game. Now, Oath of Devotion, Oath of the Ancients, Oath of Vengeance, and Oathbreaker. Oath of Devotion, I would say probably B tier. Oath of the Ancients is better. It's more healing focused. Oath of Vengeance, I would say S tier. Paladins are strong because they have Smite, and you only need 2 levels of Paladin to get a huge benefit out of them. At level 6, they get the Aura Protection, gives the Charisma modifier to the saving throws, which is extremely good for everyone, really. But I would say Oath of Vengeance Paladin is probably the strongest. With Oathbreaker, I would probably also put in I would say A tier. Oathbreaker is more so focused if you have like undead, which can work really well in some builds. Like if you have a Necromancer or a Spore Druid, it can go alongside it very well. So I would say Oathbreaker is probably A tier, could be S tier, but Vengeance just ends up being higher damage because you have the ability to daze the target with your Channel Oath. So dazing a target means that you can then apply Hold Person and have a high chance of success because they're going to have a disadvantage on Wisdom saving throws. I really like the Paladin, but I think it's best multi-classed. Like my first playthrough, I played Vengeance Paladin, level 5, with 7 levels of the Fiend Warlock. So we got Fireball, Wall of Fire, and you get 3 attacks because the extra attack from Vengeance Paladin can stack if you're not on Honor mode with the Warlock's Pact of the Blade. So it's a very great multi-class. I also mentioned the Sword Bard works really well with Paladin. That's a really great build. I can't go back from using that. It's that fun. And the Sword Bard will get like things like Cone of Cold. Charisma-based Cone of Cold is huge because if you have a water team, that's a lot of damage. 128, I think, at max. So, very good. Next, we got the Rangers. Rangers are good. I would say they're underrated. I like the Ranger. I know a lot of people dunk on them all the time. Like, the Beastmaster is interesting because it can summon in, like, a bear or a wolf or a raven. And oddly enough, the Raven's the best summon. But then their summon can summon a summon, too. It's a mouthful. I would say Beastmaster's probably B tier. I like the Beastmaster. It just doesn't feel like it's as strong as the others. Hunter Ranger, I'd probably put A tier because you can get your volley attacks at level 11. Both of these are classes you want to take to level 11 and then maybe add in War Domain Cleric or something. They get most of their benefits near the end of their subclass, which is unfortunate. However, a Gloomstalker Ranger gets a lot of their benefits early on. I would say the Gloomstalker Ranger, if you take like 5 or 6 levels of this, is really powerful. And then you can multi-class in like the Rogue Thief, Rogue Assassin, Fighter. Like you got lots of options with this one. So I would say probably top of the A tier. I don't know if I could throw it up to the B. You know what? I'm going to put it in the S tier because you can also get heavy armor with the Rogue or Ranger. Sorry. And on top of all of that, it's got really good Nova damage. So turn 1, you can basically take out everyone. Gloomstalker does work pretty well with the Assassin. So you can, like, if you're smart, you can really just do a number on everyone early on. Gloomstalker's a lot of fun to play. Next, we got some fun ones. We got the Rogue Thief. Now, this is really best as a 3-level dip. I wouldn't recommend playing as a thief at high levels because it's just not as strong as the others. If you really want to play as a rogue, do 3 levels of this and then throw in the open hand monk, because that way you got a bonus action to do a bunch of punches with, which is really good. Or you could go with like the Berserker Barbarian if you want to play like a throwing build. Or even like the Gloomstalker Ranger with the Thief's Grave for the offhand crossbow attacks, and then all your disengage, the different actions that you get as a rogue. I would say I'm just going to put it in the B tier. I don't know if it's good enough to say A tier, because as you get higher in the levels, it's just not as good. But I think the best 3-level dip in the game is the Rogue Thief. The best 2-level dip in the game is Fighter, because the Fighter is going to give you Action Surge. And then, as I said earlier, best 1-level dip is the War Domain Cleric. Thief Rogue is the best, and then Assassin Rogue is good too. They both kind of go in B tier. They bring a lot of benefits to the party, but I just don't think they're as strong as some of the other builds that we have here. And then on top of that, we got the Arcane Trickster Rogue, which is the most roleplay of all time build. Arcane Trickster did not translate well at all from Dungeons and Dragons. It is Garbo in Baldur's Gate 3. Since it's supposed to have a special mage hand, and it doesn't have a special mage hand, it just is left feeling weak. Take my strong hand. It doesn't have a strong hand. So, yeah, Arcane Trickster is probably roleplay. I'd say it's the worst subclass by far. And that's okay. It's not every class has to be perfect. However, now we have what I think is the best class, Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer. I think it's a little bit better than a Sword Bard. What makes the Sorcerer so good is you can take this bad boy all the way up to level 12, and it's powerful all the way through. You get sorcery points and leveled spell slots every level. You do get less spell selection than like the Bard, the Paladin, etc. You get to select a lot of different spells, but you don't have as many prepared. However, your spells hit way harder than others. Now, what I think that Storm Sorcerer is also very powerful. I want to put them both up here and I'll talk about these. These are my favorite class in Baldur's Gate 3 is the Sorcerer. In particular, Draconic. So the Draconic will give you the Draconic Resilience, which will give you a 13 armor class at base while wearing clothing. Normal armor class with clothing is 10. So you get a nice +3 to your armor class. That's huge for survivability's sake. On top of that, you also get the so you get to pick a Draconic Ancestor, and you can choose like a Lightning, a Cold, Fire, Acid, Poison, etc. The best being Cold and Lightning, because those will be able to get their damage doubled with Create Water. But Fire is also really good on Scorching Ray. Now, what it does is it adds your Charisma modifier to the damage of those type attacks. So if you did like Chain Lightning with a Lightning Dragon Ancestor, it's going to deal an additional +5, +6 damage, or even +7 if you got 24 Charisma, making it a very high damage class. Easy S tier for sure. The Storms, it also at level 11, the Draconic can fly using movement speed. So the Storm Sorcerer gets fly at level 1, but you have to use a bonus action and cast a spell. So with the Storm Sorcerer, you'd cast a level 1 spell, and then you can fly as a bonus action. Whereas the Dragon Sorcerer just flies whenever they feel like it. I would say this Draconic Sorcerer is the best. Storm Sorcerer is also really good. It gives you Call Lightning. Call Lightning is underrated because you can channel it, or you can use it as a concentration and Call Lightning every single turn. Boom, boom, boom. Very good. So, yeah, I would say that goes in the S tier. Wild Magic Sorcerer, I would still probably say this is A tier, even though I'm going to put it in the roleplay tier. It's probably the best roleplay tier because sorcerers as a whole are very strong. But having if you're doing honor mode, it would be so hard to do a wild magic because you could turn your entire party into cats and then have a total party kill from that. So for moments like that, it could end your run, which is goofy and fun, but not when you're doing honor mode. So I would say it's roleplay tier just because of that. But the other two are very good. It could even go A tier if you're not in honor mode. Wild Magic Sorcerer is in A tier, but yeah, I need to keep this balanced. This is my favorite class, the Sorcerer, and I'm putting it in the same tier as the worst class, so I'm being not biased. Next, we got the Fiend Warlock, which is a really good class. It does taper off in terms of its strength at later levels, so I would say the Fiend is probably A tier. The Fiend is nice because you get temporary health points equal to your Charisma modifier when you take out an enemy. But also you get access to the Fireball and Wall of Fire spells, which is nice because the other subclasses just don't. Now the Warlock kind of has double double the choices for their subclass, because then you can choose your pact. So pact of the blade, pact of the chain, and pact of the tome. Pact of the blade being, I think, my favorite because an extra attack is a lot of fun. The fiend is good. I would say it's A tier. You get your spell slots back at short rest. I just think it's best multi-classed in all honesty, because you can add that if you're not playing in honor mode, multi-class your pact of the blade with another martial class. Gloomstalker Ranger, Fiend Warlock works well. Next we got the great old one. I would say this is probably B tier. You get frightened on critical hit, which is nice. However, that doesn't mean it's that good, because it's only in a small area. People hype it up to me all the time, and I've tried it a lot. It's just not as strong as some of the others. So I would have to say it's probably B tier, because that frightened it's good, but it's in such a small area, and they can pass the wisdom saving throw. So it's okay. It does pair really well with some different subclasses though, so you can add this on, and that's why I'm putting in the B tier. If you're going 12 levels, Great Old One's okay, but if you multi-class it, it's a nice addition. Next, we got the Archfey. This is okay. I'll put it in the C tier. It's not roleplay tier, but it's just not good tier. So yeah, I'd probably say T tier. And then we got the Wizard subclasses, and this is interesting because the Wizard, I feel like the Warlock is a little stronger in certain ways, and I feel like the Sorcerer is way stronger in a lot of ways. And even if you want to get into some subclasses, the Clerics are strong. Like a Tempest Cleric is probably better than most Wizards, in all honesty. Most situations, I'll say. The Wizard does have a lot of really good builds. I'm not dunking on Wizards here. They're a good class. I would say that the best Wizards probably Evocation. You can create the safety pockets, add your intelligence modifier to damage. Necromancy I'll also put in the A tier. What's nice about Necromancy is there's a couple builds that work extremely well with this. So if you get the Staff of Cherished Necromancy in Act 3, this allows you, if you, let's say, have Circle of Death, which is a level 6 spell slot, the Necromancer will heal 3 times the spell's level back as health. So that's 18 health if you kill a target with the Circle of Death. What's nice about that is the Staff of Cherished Necromancy, if you take out a target with it, will allow you to cast any Necromancy spell for free. So you can cast it again, get 18 health back. Cast it again, get 18 health back. With that build, I would say the Necromancer is probably S tier, but anytime I talk good about the Necromancer, someone gets upset. They think it's a terrible class. I think it's not bad. You do have to set up particularly with that Staff of Cherished Necromancy, but you can get it really easily in Act 3, so why not? Evocation is strong too. Conjuration, I would say Conjuration is pretty decent, probably B tier. With Transmutation being decent too, because you get the stone. You can get a Constitution saving throw proficiency stone, which is amazing for any spellcaster. Illusion is, I think Illusion's more of roleplay tier, unfortunately. And Enchantment, okay. Divination is pretty decent. I'll probably put it at A tier. And then Abjuration, probably like this. So we'll put those 3 there, those 3 there, that one there, and Illusion. Illusion, I've just never found it to be that strong. I tried it. It just doesn't seem like, you're almost better off going with a subclass like a rogue in that case. But there it is. That is a lot of subclasses. I kept this under half an hour, so I'm impressed with myself because there's 48 subclasses in this game. And yeah, the strongest of them being Draconic Sorcerer, Sword Bard, Storm Sorcerer, Open Hand Monk, Tempest Cleric, Battlemaster, Eldritch Knight, Berserker, Light Cleric, Circle of Spores, Oath of Vengeance Paladin, and Gloomstalker Ranger. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I always love to read comments and respond. I try to respond to every comment that I get regarding Baldur's Gate 3 because it's just a really fun game to talk about. And people may have some really crazy build for the Trickery Domain Cleric, or maybe someone can channel the Wild Magic and make it a very, very powerful S tier class. I love to hear those thoughts. So please feel free to comment with your thoughts below. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video fun and useful, please hit the subscribe button below. Appreciate all the support, and I'll see you all in the next video.